Hi, it's Jessie. I'm back again. And I said some things yesterday that I want to expand on. For one, I said that Moses commanded that there be judges put on the gates, right? He set up this community, the Jews, and he set up a way to preserve them, to settle matters between them, right? Like when we say put judges on the gates, we're saying that what happens in private is one thing, but when it comes out into public view, it has to be judged, right? We're saying that we're going to keep someone on guard to make sure that the wrong teachings don't come into the community. We're saying that we're going to keep someone on guard to make sure people are living according to the ways that they're supposed to be living. And this judge is going to not only convict people. See, we make the mistake of thinking that the law is given for punishment when actually the law is given for our protection. It's given as a guide, as a means for us to live the right way. But if we put the wrong judge on the gate, then the law is punitive, purely punitive. It is bloodthirsty punitive. It is punitive without reason, but with the reason because, you know, while slavery is outlawed in the nation, you can put someone in slavery if you have them in prison. And that's why judges can be so punitive, because they profit from it. I don't know if that makes sense to you all. I've been isolated for a very long time. I have no one to talk to. Yeah, I have my kids, but, a child, I don't have these conversations with my kids, let's put it that way. They don't have the mental maturity to handle it. Some of them are a little mad at God right now and don't want to hear about God's stories. Some of them look at my teachings and say, I have 4 kids, by the way, will say, that's not the way the world works, Ma. And then it's like, no, it's not. And that's the problem, that, people give position and power to other people who advance their agenda, despite the fact that they don't have the emotional maturity or the intelligence or the wisdom or, even the forethought to know that their actions have consequences. They just mindlessly, brain dead robot, they do what they're told to do without thinking. And because they jump on this bandwagon of agenda, they really don't think about the things that they're carrying out, right? And where the law is like punitive, um, people are not learning. The only thing people are learning is how to condemn one another, how to cut one another down with the sword, because the judges on the gates establish the standards for the nation. I don't know if you understand this. We have a Supreme Court, right? They're over there establishing standards for the nation. And it's not just at this high level that standards are established. It's not just like abortion issues that matter. It's not just, the LGBTQT. Sorry. I mess up numbers and letters. I can't put them together. That's not any form of disrespect. That's part of my disability, okay? But that group, and we lift up standards on that level, and those standards matter to some people within the nation. But we lift up standards, and we don't see what's going on. We don't even see that at this level we're making the law subjective. We're running on opinions. We're deciding who is right instead of deciding what is right. How do we live in peace together? We live in peace by respecting one another, We live in peace by following a law. And it's not a law that says we all have to be the same. We all have to condone or we all have to condemn these things. It's not a law like that. And when we get into law like that, we get into trouble, okay? But let me back up from that, because the point that I'm trying to make is not to get back into those issues, I can't take sides on those issues, partially because I like to preserve myself, where the law has become subjective, I must remain objective, and no, I'm not getting on either side, because when you judge wrongly, you can cost someone their lives, And so you have certain liberties that you can have, but you have to have liberties within the law, And if we don't have the right people in position, if we have just dogs that are following along, that show one face, but they don't have the character for the position. They are just following. They're not leading, they're following. And you're following them to follow someone who you cannot see. And it's a problem, see? Jeroboam, his kingdom fell. I'm bringing you back to the Bible, right? Because it's the easiest way for me to explain things, because everything that we go through has happened before. Everything, The state of our nation, we don't understand where we're going. We don't have any idea, because we haven't been taught how to think. We haven't learned, like, the ways of the enemy and the way not to be. Don't, like the Jews, they teach, remember Amalek, right? He attacks where you're weak in the law. Remember him, right? Remember all the evil that he's done, all the trouble that he's caused. You remember these things so that you don't go that way, right? But when you get into these subjective things, where they rule you by your opinion, where they pit you against one another, where they say, bow to us and do whatever you want, we puff you up with entitlement, and even tell you, your leaders will tell you, no one will know. They'll mock you and push you into things. You're just a nervous Nancy, But these kinds of leaders, they've been here before, and they've always brought the downfall of the nation, And the last nation to fall because of leaders like this, Nazi Germany, How long did Germany suffer because Nazis occupied their territory? Because they turned the hearts and the minds of the people against people and made them do horrible things, or made them complacent with horrible things, and they hunted them down and butchered them should they have not bowed to this plan. They set up this network, this pyramid scheme with people on the high end working gates. They set up teachers and doctors and nurses to run their agenda, to spy. They set up neighbors to spy on each other. They took all the doors off, and they ran narratives. They told stories that weren't true, that made people go against people. When we get into this kind of thing, we're going to fall. This is the hallmark of a nation condemned. And everyone will say that homosexuality is a sin, but I tell you, it's a sign. This nation that Jeroboam set up, where he said anybody could be priests, not knowing, people run agendas when they don't know what to do. People jump on bandwagons, and they what's the word? Plagiarize other people. They steal ideas from other people. They don't have the character to follow through, but they're saying the best words, and so you think they're true. You think that they're righteous, right? But they're not. They're just plagiarizing someone else and showing you one face while on a bandwagon, following someone else because they put their trust that someone higher up in them knows what they're doing. And before you know it, the whole nation is condemned. And when the nation of Israel, when they were finally cleaned up, it was like generations later when Asa came up. And when Asa came up, the first thing that he did when he was restoring the nation, because he did what was right in the eyes of God. You go into 1 Kings 15, the first thing that he did was he expelled the male shrine prostitutes from the land and got rid of the idols his ancestors made. So you see, when you have someone phony in office, there's going to be signs. There's going to be sexual perversion all around you, It's a sign of what you're in, because when people puff up people with entitlement, many times they avoid paying money by puffing them up with the entitlement to do as they please sexually, so they can rape women, so they can turn others into their slaves. Male prostitute, having to sell his body to eat, there is plenty of corruption going on, and even after the corrupt one comes out, back to my thought, I had a brain fart, right? They puff you up with entitlement, is what I was saying, and they do it with sexuality, and overzealous sexual community is one that's bent for its downfall, like with Sodom and Gomorrah. We get the term sodomize from Sodom, so you know what they were doing back then, where they had no filters, where they were like banging on doors when the angels came to visit Lot. They were banging on doors saying, we want to have sex with the angels, right? So we see that it's not just the people who are super sexual, who are hypersexual, who have no filter, who have no limits, who just want to try everything. Try it. You might like it. Maybe you're gay. You don't know until you try it, They put all kinds of crazy ideas in your head. Oh, you feel like an outcast in society? Well, it must be because you're gay. They find excuses for why people feel oppressed in oppressive society that has nothing to do with the real reason why they feel oppressed, but it deflects attention away from the real cause, which is their style of leadership, and so they turn everybody this way. They turn everybody into supersexual, and they make this thing about rights, where it's actually not rights but license. You're not expressing your right to be gay. You're asking for permission from everybody else. You're saying everybody's got to say it's right so that I'm not condemned. You're not expressing a right. You're looking for license, and we should be really clear about this when we're arguing things in courts of law, when there's a difference between rights and license. And not everybody has to give you license. Sometimes you got to learn to live with adversity, okay? I live with adversity every day. I'm surrounded by armies who want to take me out, and I didn't say anything before. You never heard me talk like this before, but I'm gonna talk like this now because they killed me. They killed me too many times. So let's unpack history on their ass and let's unpack history on their head and show them that they're not special. They're not clever. These things have been done before. And when we want to clean up society, the first things that we do need to do is expel the male shrine prostitutes. Because you're not going to take this standard that they gave you and transfer it to everybody else, because they puffed you up with entitlement over here and told you it was a good thing. It's not a good thing, It's not a good thing. They've turned your head. They've turned your heart. They have convinced you to sell your body, They've convinced you that this is the way that we do it, They have convinced you. It's ridiculous. And they did these things to avoid accountability. They do these things to avoid accountability. They make it all about you so you don't look at them and understand that they're the ones steering you, And I don't know how to get into this argument there, because, I don't like to get into subjective things, but I know how things work. I know how people work. How do I know? Because I've been around the beast enough times to know, you know. They push you this way. They tell you who you are. They tell you what's okay. They test you out, and they put ideas in your head. Oh, yeah, you feel ostracized. Well, maybe you're gay and you just don't know it, you know? Maybe you're repressing it. Maybe you're hiding in a closet. I've heard these lines before. And what I like to tell you is that is gaslighting. And because I've heard these lines before, it makes me wonder, how much of this authentic? How much is this gaslighting? How much is this is indicative? How much of it is a sign that we're on our way to destruction? That our government's about to fall, our economy's about to crash, that we're on a highway to hell, How much of it, And I really hope that I'm speaking in terms that somebody out there can understand, Sorry for cussing. I was raised with 8 brothers, and sometimes it just slips out of me, especially when I'm talking about stupid nonsense, We need to sit back before we get into this debate and recognize that we have been gaslit. We have been propped up with entitlement. We have been handed idols where there's no accountability, where we could do what we want to do, where we say something like, Jesus saves the sinner, so don't worry about it, that God forgives. We're fed these lines but they sound good, but they're a con. Do you understand? They're a con to make us fall into sin. Why? Because if you fall into sin, then you give the accuser power to rule over you. They drain you by accusing you. I don't know if you understand this. They drain you by making accusations against you. They take your power away from you. They eat your life force. They puff up themselves with the entitlement of, oh, I'm their judge. No, I'm their king. No, I'm their God. They make themselves gods by tempting you to sin. And when you do, they accuse you. They twist your motives. They make everything about you, and you don't even see it. Which is why Asa had to do some things when he came into the kingdom after Jeroboam and his sons, Asa had to do some things. He had to get rid of the idols. He had to get rid of people's false ideas about God. That you can live lawless. That you can eat each other. That you have license to do whatever you want to do. He had to get rid of these things. Can you see this? Can you picture it? And he had expelled the male prostitutes, right? Why? Because they're already dead. They're already dead. They've already fully let go of the law, and there is no bringing them back. There's a point of no return, and they've passed into it. So they had to expel them from the land, so that we didn't have to have this whole debate over, gay rights. And I'm not a bigot. I'll tell you, it's not a sin. It's a sign. It's a sign of what your leadership is. Pay attention to this, because maybe you wake up from the gaslighting. Maybe those scales fall off your eyes. Maybe you think back to a point in a time in your life, and you realize, I was gaslit. What am I doing? Maybe it falls off, and maybe I'm just saying, because, I live in the nation. If we're going to hell, I'm going with you. If we fall together. Prosperity is linked. So it's in my best interest to teach you some law. It's in my best interest to show you patterns of what has happened before and what people do. It's in my best interest to show you who the devil is, to tell you to remember Amalek, so that, you can strengthen yourself in the law, so that you understand things, so that you don't put your trust in someone just because they hold a position, because these people put anybody in office who serve their agenda, and they're driving us the wrong way. Don't get on that bandwagon. Is going the wrong way, You have to understand these things, because if you don't, it's your life. You are responsible for your own salvation. I got to go with you on this road. We're in the nation together. I got to go with you. But that's not to say that I'm going to stay in the place where you end up. I don't want to go through all this chaos and all this nonsense. It's not necessary. Everybody's looking for a Messiah to come and save them. But wait a minute. Because when you go this way, you go past the point of no return. You got to be exiled. You don't get a Messiah. You get to struggle through strife, through heartache, through hardship, through famine, through flood, through storm, through earthquakes, through wars, through fighting in your house. God puts a sword against your house. You got to go through all these things. Or you could return to the law. You could start to take notice of things. I can't tell you that Jesus saves. I can't tell you that, because the world is too polluted. And he said all these things will come. But he didn't tell you that they don't have to. He didn't tell you that if you turn away from this nonsense, if you learn how to live right, if you learn God's ways, how he was before is the same way he is now. He is the same God. That it is not yet too late. You're looking for a Messiah. What did Asa do? Asa put you out. He said, there ain't no hope for you. You can't run with me. You're polluted. You're toxic. You've given yourself over all away. You're the one who has to wake up before a Messiah can come. Does that make sense to anybody? A Messiah can't save you from what you're submitted to. When Adam and Eve were in the garden and they ran with the devil on eating this fruit, God kicked them out. Why? Because they were no longer submitted to him. They didn't keep his law anymore. The one law he gave them, the one rule he gave them, they didn't keep it. They decided to follow lawlessness. He can't have that in his presence. Why? Because the law prescribes what is going to be judged. Like I said, the law is not necessarily punishment, right? It's meant to be a protection, right? So when we look at the law, we understand that these are the parameters through which God is going to judge you. And here's the formula for how to avoid judgment, how to find forgiveness, how to find atonement. And here's the formula for how to make things right, It's what God does. He doesn't send you out there mindlessly wandering in the wilderness, following anything that says, hey, come here, give me all your power, and I'll take you my way, Well, they're getting fat off of your life power, your life force, whatever you want to call it. They're draining the life from you, and you're running after them, God isn't like that. He empowers you with liberty. The law brings liberty. It tells us how to live in peace with one another. And it tells us how to remain in peace with God. Even when we've done wrong. It tells us. It tells us that we can't hide. That our brother's blood cries out from the ground. There's nothing hidden that won't be seen. When you learn God, when you know God, you're not going to go that way. Why? Because fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. You don't want to be an enemy of God. You don't want to be in a world without God, because a world without God will always wind up in slavery. It will always come down to devolve into something like Nazi Germany. And I only use that as a point because everybody knows what it was. It ended in a Holocaust and a war, right? We all know these things, right? What we don't understand is that it happened before. Stalin. Not just Stalin. There's been many, many, many evil men like this who rose into power, and they rose into power because the people were lawless. They didn't understand when they said, follow me, they were going to lose their life. Yeah, they were going to rise up for a minute, but they were going to be cut down. Their nation was going to fall. Their whole nation was going to fall because they followed the wrong man. They didn't have an understanding. Do you get what I'm saying? You follow the wrong leader, you don't just condemn yourself, you condemn your nation. And let me tell you something about God. Your safety is being a member of a nation. You know, this is why the Jews stick together. Their prayers, they believe, go up when they're part of a community. You know, if we're all praying together, if one of us punches through, we all punch through. God forgives us. If we're all standing here, we have a better chance of going through the judgment and surviving than if we come before God and are judged as one. It is better to be judged as a nation than to be judged individually, because as a nation, you know, this law is stronger that says we forgive. There's this atonement, you know. We have this 7-year cycle where all debt is forgiven, you know. We have these rules in place, and where the law is strong, judgment is restrained, okay? Punishment is restrained. Blessings are magnified, you know? But you follow the wrong leader. He divides you. He divides you against your own house. He divides you against your own community. He just points the finger and you go and you think they're the problem, but no, that leader is the problem. And the problem is that you followed him. And the problem is your nation is going to fall for it. Don't make stupid choices because you're an individual and entitled to do what you want to do. Don't make stupid choices like that. Think of your family. Think of your nation. First and foremost, you know, think of God. You know, you want God in your life, you know. So, I don't know. I'm just saying, because you put the wrong person in office. You put the wrong person in office. He brings these things about, and he leads you to your destruction. You know, just saying. I don't know if anybody's going to listen to me here, but if you do, if you decide to, don't go around condemning people. Don't do it. Try to put us back together. Try to open our eyes. Try to make us see where we've been gaslit. Learn what gaslighting is. You know, many people don't know how they tell you who you are, how they puff you up with entitlement, how they turn you against people. Teach against that stuff, you know. Teach for unity, for not just forgiveness, but for understanding that we have had bad leaders. We have been gaslit. We have been misled. And if we're going to come out of it, we come out of it together. You know, I come out of it, but I'm by myself. What good is it? What good is it? I still got people lying on me all around the place, you know. I still got people running the same scams, whitewashing their crimes. My daughter has had more play dates in the past week than she's had in 10 years of living here, you know. It's insane. They all want to whitewash crimes and act like we're on good terms, but we're really not, you know. It's just the way they do it. You put lawless people in the office and you got no idea what the law is. You got no idea what they're saying. You know, every time I speak, they send me like low lunch balance alerts for my daughter. You know, my daughter eats home lunches. I don't care if there's no money in her lunch account. You know, I pack her lunch every day. She doesn't eat their food, you know. But every time I speak, they send me this. And then they send me a note saying about free lunches. I don't care for your free lunches. I pack my daughter's food. We don't eat your food. It's disgusting. We take care of our own here, you know. But they make these cases, and I don't know what they mean. I don't know what they're saying. But I know it's because somebody lawless is sitting up there and making cases to take my life, and I'm powerless because I don't know how they're operating, because how they're operating is twisted. And so I know if they're leading me to my death, they're leading everybody else to their death because they have no laws. They have no laws that are in the light, you know? I'm just saying. All right, I'm out of time because I'm past my 30-minute mark here. I'll come back and talk some more about this and try to explain more in depth. If you have a question, please ask. All right, have a good day and God bless.